We're in 2 Samuel this morning, chapter 1. We're going to read verses 17 to 27. It was suggested to me last week after class that I need to share the reading a little more with everyone and not worry so much about the time, but to get everyone to participate a bit. And as I thought about that, I thought, if we rush through and miss points, well, it doesn't do any good, does it? So I'll try and clear that up. But this morning, 1 Samuel ends with the recording of the Philistines having killed King Saul and his son Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchi-Shua. They're dead. The Philistines have killed them. And then in 2 Samuel chapter 1, verses 17 to 27, we read here David's lamentation, for Saul and Jonathan. And so we'll read, we'll start with Jared. We'll read 3 verses each, and then I'll remember where it ends.
Then David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son, and he told them to teach the children of Judah the song of the bow. Indeed, it is written in the book of Jasher, the beauty of Israel is slain on your high places, how the mighty have fallen.
Tell it not in Gath, publish it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised exult. Your mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew or rain upon you, nor fields of offerings. Where there the shield of the mighty was defiled, and the shield of Saul not anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan turned not back, and the sword of Saul returned not empty.
Verse 23.
Saul and Jonathan were lovely and pleasant in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. Ye daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you in scarlet with other delights, who put on ornaments of gold upon your apparel. How are the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle, O Jonathan? Thou wast slain in thy high places.
I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was wonderful, surpassing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war perished.
Okay, thinking about David and Saul, their past, one would think that David would be rejoicing, wouldn't you? Why not?
Well, because all of the chances David had to kill Saul, he didn't kill him. Right up to standing right beside him many times, because he respected God's anointed.
Right.
So he lamented.
Exactly, Gord.
Not joyful. It was not a pleasant thing for him.
No, exactly. Sometimes to man, someone that has tried to kill you time and time again, your lamenting might not be the same as David's. And that may be our way of thinking, but not David's. As Gord just pointed out, he was a man after God's own heart, God said. And instead, he laments and he writes the Song of the Bow, and then he asks that future generations, young people, learn it also, be reminded. And that was something that was customary in the East, for the Middle East at that time. People on the death of kings and warriors, they would write songs that would celebrate the qualities and the deeds of that king. And it was a song really of trial and discipline. But David's words brings to mind a lesson for us. And that's in Proverbs Proverbs chapter 24. I'll give it to you, Gord. Proverbs,
I just read
the which?
He just read.
Oh, you only read one verse, didn't you? Oh, two? Oh,
I can read that one.
I got to keep you to three. Okay, Jeff, you read Proverbs 24 and verse 17.
Do not rejoice when your enemy falls, and do not let your heart be glad when he stumbles.
Okay, and Tammy, Romans 12, verse 19. Romans 12 and verse 19.
Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord.
Okay, those are lessons for us, isn't it? When we're wronged. And we think of David, but like Gord said, David respected the kings. It didn't matter they were evil or they were good. He respected them as regents of God, and especially the Davidic kings. And David's position now, if we go to 2 Samuel, we'll go back there, and this is the only repeat I'll do from last week. But we see here that David's position has now changed. Saul's dead, Jonathan is dead, and he knows, he understands that he now needs divine guidance on how to act. And we see in 2 Samuel 2, verses 1 to 7, we'll read 3 verses each. Lista, and then I'll go to wisdom. 2 Samuel 2, verses 1 to 7.
After the death of Samuel, when David had returned from striking down the Ammonites, David remained 2 days in Carmel. And on the third day, behold, a man came from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dirty from visiting Jerusalem.
Lista's in the wrong chapter. 2 Samuel chapter 2.
Second Samuel 2, 1 to 7.
Did you find it?
Then appeared of the Lord, shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said, Go up the mountains, to which shall I go up? And he said, the Lord. So then he went up there, and with his 2 wives also, Ahinoam, Jerusalem, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel.
Verse 4 to 6, wisdom.
Then the men of Judah came, and there the anointed David came over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, The men of Jabesh Gilead were the ones who buried Saul. So David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead, and said to them, You are blessed of the Lord, for you have shown this kindness to your Lord, to Saul, and have buried him. And now may the Lord show kindness and truth to you. I also will repay this kindness because you have done this thing. Now therefore let your hands be strengthened and be valiant, for your master Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed the king over you.
Okay, thank you. God here now, David's come to God in prayer, looking for direction. God tells him to go to Hebron, okay, and with his family. and all his men, David goes. And where the men of Judah now anoint him. Okay, this is the second time now. Remember Samuel and God anointed David back in, let's see what chapter that was. Back in chapter 16. And now here the people anoint David. And David's character stands out again to me with his attitude towards the men of Jabesh Gilead. They buried Saul. They went and got Saul and took him. They buried him in Gilead, I think. I'm just not sure, but I think that was where they took Saul. But they did that. And David praises them for that. He shows his kindness to them for that. And that all stands out. As I was saying a minute ago, David respected that God had set these men, set Saul in place to be a king. And no matter what, that was God's choice. And David wasn't going to interfere, wasn't going to talk down, speak wrongly of the king. And I just thought as we compare sometimes the characters of, like Abraham and Moses and now David, these men were faithful. And they let God take care of the situations. And that's a challenge for us to think about those things. But we now come to where we were last week with the Lord's words for David given to the prophet of Nathan. And in 2 Samuel, I put these up on the screen for time's sakes. In 2 Samuel chapter 7, we'll read verses 8 to 17. And we'll read of this covenant that he made with David. Henry, do you want to read?
How many verses
So-
is that?
Did you read?
How many
No,
verses?
Oh, well, read 8 to 9 for you. I'll keep it with the screen. Or with the...
Now therefore, thus shall you say to my servant David, thus says the Lord of hosts, I took you from the sheepfold, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, over Israel. And I have been with you wherever you have gone, and have cut off all your enemies from before you, and have made you a great name, not like the name of great men from the earth.
Okay. I highlighted the words that God spoke to David for us to think about what God has been saying here. And then verses 10 to 11, Annie, I'll come to you, please.
Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and move no more. Nor shall the sons of Jacob pass by them any more as previously, since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and have caused you to rest from all your enemies. Also the Lord tells you that he will make you a house.
Okay, and Menchie, 12 to 14.
When your days are fulfilled and you rest with your fathers, I will set up your seed after you, who will come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commits iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the blows of the sons of men.
Okay. and verses 15 to 17.
But my mercy shall not depart from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I removed from before you. And your house and your kingdom shall be established forever before you. Your throne shall be established forever. According to all these words and according to all this vision, so Nathan spoke to David.
Thank you, Miriam. And in First Chronicles, I'll read this. First Chronicles, chapter 17, we see the same story, the same thing that Nathan had said to Daniel. And it's recorded in Chronicles, and it shall be when your days are fulfilled, when you must go to be with your fathers, that I will set up your seed after you, who will be of your sons, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build me a house, and I will establish his throne forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. And I will not take my mercy away from him, as I took it from him who was before you. And I will establish him in my house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established forever. Both of these passages are God's immediate promises, to David. And we'll look at some of them. First of all, God said that I will set up your seed after you, who will be of your sons. And the Lord said, I will establish his kingdom. He shall build me a house, and I will establish his throne forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commits iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men. And also we find here that someone is to sit on this throne forever. So who are we considering first here in David's line?
Solomon.
Right,
Solomon.
right, Jared, Solomon. The thought is, where do we begin? I think sometimes, let me explain this way. There's a present-day explorer named Adam Schultz, who travels Canada's wilderness. And I like to read his stories of his adventures. But there's times when he gets himself into some grueling situations. And my desire is to turn to the ending of the chapter or the end of the book to find out and see if he lives, if he gets through this. And what do I gain by doing that? I gain nothing, do I? Really? I miss his purpose for relating his struggles. I may learn that he lived, but I don't learn anything about how he got through it. I miss learning of his skills to get himself out of his predicaments, and my impatience really robs me of his reasons for writing of his adventures. And the Lord's prophecies are no different. Many times when we turn to this passage, we want to jump to Christ right away. And like I said with Abraham and Isaac, and then we get to Moses at Mount Sinai. Well, how do we know what happened in between that? We don't know how that promise was fulfilled. And in studying with someone, if I know the outcome of the prophecy and go to the fulfillment immediately, my listener never learns, really, or sees how the Lord brought about his promises. And they never really understand God's hand in the affairs of men. For instance, I thought all the kings. Okay, first of all, we begin with King Saul. Okay, and following the death of Saul, Ishbosheth, Saul's youngest son, was made king. but he was made king by the captain of Saul's army. And this brought about a political struggle for the throne between the houses of Saul and David, which plagued David most of his life, with murders on both sides of the families. But we see that David simply continues to walk in God's ways, and he lets God take control of his fate. And as we follow through these kings of Judah, all from the line of David, we see that God is at work through the good and the evil kings in fulfilling his promises to David. And we notice, though, in this line of kings, we come across the name of a woman, Athaliah. Athaliah is the end of David's line. Okay, we look at this, and to sit on his throne. And Athaliah is not a king, is she? Nor was she even from the house of Judah. So we need to understand what happened here. Athaliah was the daughter of King Ahab and Jezebel of the northern tribes of Israel. And she was brought up in a family that was motivated by power and by treachery. And she married Jehoram. And he was the son of Jehoshaphat at the time, king of Judah. Jehoshaphat was a faithful king, but he made a big mistake by agreeing to a political alliance with King Ahab of Israel. And through Jehoshaphat's mistake, Athaliah was now in the house of David, and she wanted the throne. She wanted to end the throne for David. And it's interesting that God did not set her on the throne. We need to understand that. She seized it. She seized it after the death of her husband Joram, who himself had provoked God and died of a God-inflicted sickness. And so now his son Ahaziah was now next in line for the throne. But he too did evil in God's eyes by following the house of Ahab. And they were his counselors instead of God. And so he too paid for his sins by being killed in a battle that Jehu had brought against the house of Ahab. And Athaliah now, as far as she thought, okay, she had control of David's throne at this time. And she begins by inflicting one of the grossest scenes in the history of Israel. And we read that in 2 Kings 11 and verse 1. Naomi, I'll give that to you, please.
Now when Athaliah, the mother of Uzziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal family.
Okay, we got to remember here, this is the end of God's promise to David. God didn't set her on the throne. She seized the throne. And we see here that when she did, and she knew that her son was dead, she had all of David's grandchildren and his heirs killed. And that is all the Bible says of that gruesome scene, is that she killed them. But without knowing of this story, we would not see God's hand in David's covenant and the faithfulness of Jehosheba and the priest Jehoiada. And we read of them down in verses 2 and 3. We read what happened here. Jer, I'll give that to you, please.
But Jehosheba, the daughter of King Joram, sister of Ahaziah, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him away from among the king's sons who were murdered. And they hid him and his nurse in the bedroom from Athaliah, so he was not killed. So he was hidden with her in the house of the Lord for 6 years. while Athaliah reigned over the land.
The sister Hazahiah and the priest Jehoiada hid Joash. So the line of David has not ended, has it? They've hid them. Sure.
I said it's amazing to me to see. Okay, Joram, her father, was evil. Athaliah, her mother, was evil. Ahaziah, her brother, was evil, but Jehoshaphat was not. In fact, I think Chronicles would say that she's actually married to the high priest. I can't.
But she did,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, and so, like, as far as it's Jehoiada and Jehoshaphat just shows you that just because your family might walk away from the Lord doesn't mean you have to.
Exactly. Yeah. I might recommend your podcast on this section, as I listened to it yesterday. But it is amazing here. And what stands out to me is a woman or a human is trying to throttle the Lord's covenant that he made to David. They're trying to change that, to end it. And we know the story of Ahab and Jezebel, how wicked they are, while their daughter was just as bad, if not worse. She killed all the children in lying. And we read in 2 Kings 11, verses 12 to 13. We'll read of that story. Did you read, Naomi? Jerry, you read?
Yeah, it's Gordon Calla.
Gordon Calla. Please.
And he brought out the king's son, put the crown on him, and gave him the testimony. They made him king and anointed him. And they clapped their hands and said, Lord, long live the king. Now when Athaliah heard the noise of the escorts and the people, she came to the people in the temple of the Lord.
Okay. This is roughly 7 years that Athaliah now has been on the throne, I think. It's around there. She's been on the throne a while. And Joash has been hidden. And now the priest Jehoiada has decided it's time to bring him out and present him to the people. And in verses 14, Athaliah now sees this happening. They're in the courtyard. And we read there, when she looked, there was a king standing by a pillar according to custom. And the leaders and the trumpeters were by the king. All the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets. So Athaliah tore her clothes and cried out, treason. And we read in verses 15 to 16. Gord, I'll give that to you, please. 2 Kings chapter 11, verses 15 and 16.
And Jehoiada, the priest, commanded the captains of hundreds, the officers of the army, and said to them, take her outside under guard and slay her with the sword, whoever follows her. For the priest had said, do not let her be killed in the house of the Lord. So they seized her, and she went by way of the horses' entrance into the king's house, and there she was killed.
Okay. Athaliah thought that she would end the rule of the house of David, and that she was going to sit on the throne. And her lust for power and control brought her the judgment that she rightly deserved, didn't it? God allowed her to inflict her evil desires, but as we see, he was in the background, okay, controlling the outcome of this situation. And his covenant with David now will continue on it to its fulfillment. And it's just something to consider with her. Sometimes, we want to change the Lord's laws. We want to change his plans. And we see, though, that it won't work. The Lord always wins in the end. And here, especially with Athaliah, trying to disrupt her promise, or God's promise to King David. Jer?
I said God worked through human events. He did not. Some people say, well, why wouldn't he have just stopped Athaliah from taking the throne? That is in the mind of God. But his purpose will always stand in the end.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think of the household, Ahab and Jezebel, the Lord brought judgment to them. And that's up to the Lord. And like Jer said, the length of time that she sat on the throne, the fact that she killed all David's grandchildren, the royal line, those things are left to the Lord. But we see, though, the point for us is that covenant is still on its way to being fulfilled. And we looked quickly at Psalms 89, verses 3 to 4. This is Ethan the Ezrahite. This is his prayer, okay? And he says, God says, I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn to my servant David. Your seed I will establish forever and build up your throne to all generations. Selah. And the heavens will praise your wonders, O Lord, your faithfulness also in the assembly of the saints. Ethan here is stating that God's going to honor his Davidic covenant that was made back in 2 Samuel 7. And we see here that Ethan speaks not only of the promise that a line of descent to the throne would be supplied, but he says an enduring throne, one that wouldn't end. Someone that's telling us that someone other than Judah's kings who have died and been buried will sit on David's throne. And I want us to turn to Isaiah. We have a few here verses that I didn't put up. Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11 and verses 1 to 5. Gord, you read last, didn't you? Jeff, do you want to read 1 and 2? And Tammy, I'll give you 3 to 5.
There shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord.
His delight is in the fear of the Lord, and he shall not judge by the sight of his eyes, nor decide by the hearing of his ears. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt of his loins, and faithfulness the belt of his waist.
Okay, now we're speaking of someone that is going to sit on the throne of David. And the words rod and branch, what terms are they? What comes to our mind? Who are they speaking of? Are they not messianic terms? The rod and the branch? They're figurative words, of course, for the great descendant, okay, of the household of David, the seed of woman that was promised back in Genesis 3 and 15. And now let's go to Isaiah chapter 9. Isaiah chapter 9. Wow. That's the bell already. Isaiah chapter 9. Well, then we'll we'll end with that because we can work this into our lesson on the covenant of promise. So Isaiah 9, verses 1 to 7. I'll read the first three, and then wisdom, I'll give you 3 verses, and Lisa, I'll give you verse 7, the last one. Nevertheless, the gloom will not be upon her who is distressed, as when at first he highly esteemed the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward more heavily oppressed her by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan in Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in the land of the shadow of death, upon them a light has shined. You have multiplied the nation and increased its joy. They rejoice before you according to the joy of harvest, as men rejoice when they divide the spoil.
For you have broken the yoke of his burden, and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, and as in the day of Midian. For every warrior's sandal from the noisy battle, and garments rolled in blood, will be used for burning and fuel of fire. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Well, next week then we'll begin with the fulfillment of that passage. We'll look at that in Matthew and move on from there.